Bon. The confessioner fidgeted side to side. She was slowly being withdrawn from the encompassing darkness of her sleep. Something nudged her foreleg. Bon. Finally placed back into the walking world, Bon cracked her eyes open. She was in her bedroom. The annoying striped wallpaper she never got around to replace indicated that her body felt uncomfortably warm under her sheets. Releasing a groan, she measly pushed the covers off of her and let the cool morning air regulate her temperature. She knew this particular lethargy. Again, it seemed she ate too much candy, fell asleep too late, and woke up bone-tired from the craziest dream she had ever dreamt in. Probably forever. It was more akin to a nightmare. She attempted to recall some of it before it faded away forever. Some horrible-looking monster attacked the town. She was running for her life, trying not to look back. Then she quietly ran into her good friend Lyra. But it was not Lyra. She knew it was some hybrid creature that half looked like Lyra. But the other half had pale flesh, 2 extra limbs, and a particularly flat face. She could recall no more, which probably indicated the point when she woke up. Bon had no idea how or why her subconscious conjured up these ludicrous, surreal things in her sleep, but she dismissed it like every other strange dream, assuring herself that it wasn't reality. She was nudged on her foreleg again. Odd. It felt like something was wrapped around it. Hey, Bon, you awake? She sighed. It was her roommate, Lyra, being obnoxious as ever. She may have been her friend since she was a little filly, but there was a good reason why Bon strove to wake up early every morning. So she wasn't woken up by her. At least she didn't use the miniature gong. Bwash! Are you awake now? Yes! I am awake! She yelled out of spite. She didn't bother turning to her direction, which was the other bed left of her. She just continued to stare at the annoying wallpaper. Okay, cool. I thought you went into a coma or something. Bon rolled her eyes. Better luck next time, right? I hope not. You know what? She felt her temperature flare again, but she didn't bother to quail it. She felt it completely justified to berate her friend from being so Celestia damned abrasive. Why can't you just leave me alone for once, huh? Do you feel that it is your sworn duty to make my life miserable? Do you think it's funny when I squirm? No, it's just, I thought, I can't even get away from you in my dreams. You were there, except you were some mutant thing. Lyra said nothing for a long time. You thought that was a dream. A jarring sensation hit Bon. Made her put into question her initial assumption of the fantasy she experienced. The memories didn't fade away, they were real. They were real. The monster, the running, the town in panic and ruins. Lyra. Bon turned around. Oh my Celestia! Please, don't freak out. She tried to calm her writhing friend, her hand clamped firmly over her mouth. Still, she struggled wide-eyed, attempting to twist out of the centaur's grip. She persisted for a few more seconds, but they started to get weary of it. Lyra held fast. Okay, she said after Bon had stopped thrashing. I'm going to let you go, and then I'll tell you what happened. You gotta promise me that you won't scream, alright? With quivering eyes, and the candy maker nodded her head. Okay, I'm gonna let you go now. She released her, and Bon sat in place for a moment, then sprinted for the door. No! Lyra leapt up and caught the terrified mare before she could make it across the room. She kicked and flailed into her with all her might. Help! Help! Some pony, help! The hand was forced over her mouth again. Bon, please, don't run away from me. Aren't we still friends? That seemed to have an effect. She slackened, ceasing all attempts of breaking free. And Lyra let go of her mouth. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, she admitted. The centaur released her from her arms and gently set her on the ground. Bon observed Lyra's new form closely for the first time. She was still wearing Dominic's red sash around her chest. Besides the fact that she never bothered to take it off, it made running a little more comfortable for her. What happened to you? How did you get like this? Lyra met her eyes with some remorse. I messed up, Bonbon. I messed up bad. She lowered herself to the floor. I snuck into the alchemist's lab, you know, and the one near Everfree. I took one of his potions. I didn't care for my own safety. I threatened to... She couldn't speak any further. Bringing her hand to her face, she tried not to break down in front of her friend. I'm sorry. I think you were right. I think I am crazy. Bonbon comforted her friend as best as she could. It doesn't matter, Lyra. You can be difficult sometimes, but I'll still be your friend no matter what you look like. But I'm stuck like this forever. What? Lyra pulled away. How would she explain something like this? Well, I kinda, sorta drank all of it. A good couple liters. Dominic, that's his name. He said I'm stuck like this for the rest of my life for doing that. Isn't there an antidote? She shook her head. He said no and told me why that wouldn't work. Lyra paused. I forgot what he said. His breath stinks really bad, by the way. Bonbon took a few steps back, eyes to the ground. I'm sorry about that, Lyra. That you have to live like this for the rest of your life. It's not bad. It's not so bad, she said, her gloom evaporating almost instantly. I mean, at least I got these babies. She held up her hand and flexed her slim fingers. Just as good as magic. I can still play my lyre. The confessioner raised an eyebrow in skepticism. No, really, they're awesome. She moved a little closer. Just feel them. Bonbon flinched away. No, that's okay. I take your word for it. No, wait. Just let me run through your mane. Lyra, I really don't... It's harmless. The hand still moving closer. I dropped my phone. Really, Lyra. The hand met the curl strands of her mane, penetrating the thick, bundled layers of hair and touching her scalp. Slowly the hand ran down the length of her neck. A tingling sensation drained all the tightness from her muscles. She cooed unintentionally but inaudibly. Bonbon shuddered as Lyra's hand pulled back. Good? She asked. Yeah. Her friend replied, even fluttering. Again? Yes. She moved her hand towards her friend again, but this time she went for the chin, then the neck. Bonbon rolled onto her back, legs splayed. The centaur began rubbing her chest, while the pony lay staring off into space, tongue hanging out of her mouth. Can you rub a bit lower? Bonbon requested. Lyra complied. Lower? Lyra went lower again, but with more hesitation. Lower? Lyra only went an inch downward, staying on the humiliated expression of discomfort playing on her human face. Lower? Bonbon said with a moan forced its way out of her throat. Wow, Bonbon. Lyra retracted her hand. This is getting kinda weird. Confectioner whipped her hoof out and stopped her hand. She glared at a deathly gaze at her friend. Don't you dare stop. Don't you dare stop. Applejack waited outside of the hospital with her friends. Rarity and Pinkie Pie had to leave for their homes. Only the librarian and the alchemist remained. Ellis said he wouldn't be long, but the wait was starting to agitate Twilight, who could not stand to be idle while the town was in ruins. Dominic and his patients sat on the other side of the doorway, humming some sad tune she did not recognize. She hated it. She hated to see Ponyville like this. With every breath she took, she could smell smoke and fear from her nostrils. Through her nostrils. She could smell blood and broken spirits. Never in the history of the quaint village had anything like this happened. Applejack never would have thought that only a small taste of Earth's dystopia would have this impact. Ellis said that there were at least dozens or even hundreds of these tanks back where he came from. Not come from. And all it took was just one of them to render the pony's peace-loving society to shreds. She felt the festering sickness of melancholy wedge itself into her stomach again. As much as she wanted to be happy, fate just decided to take another course. Off to the side, Dominic suddenly blinked as if he remembered something, and grumbled to himself inaudibly. He probably forgot to do something back at his lab. Applejack's thoughts were shifted to the tank itself. Only anger and hate were present in the subject of the monster for the farm pony, but Fleshlight reminded them all that the monster was once human, like Ellis. How could something so unassuring turn into something so big and scary? What kind of evil force does this? Green flew command to make such a horrible abomination. For the first time, she wondered about the human being the monster was. Was he kind and carefree as Ellis? Did he have a wife? Children of his own? Did it matter? Everything about his previous life was gone, for he had been reincarnated into a mindless beast. Insanity tore at the frayed edge of his mind until he gave way to the corruption, forming the hellion he was today. It was only a monster with an insatiable lust for violence and destruction. It didn't care for the victim its wrath ensnared, nor the hopes and dreams of the ponies who were unlucky. It killed some of the townfolk she knew. The downfall of being the elements of honesty is that she must be brutally honest with herself. There was nothing they could do to stop it either. The royal guard was miles away, the elements were scattered, and she wasn't there. In fact, a fact that she would never forgive herself for. That brought up a curious question. What made it leave? That thought was cut short as the hospital doors opened. Ellis's tall bipedal figure stepped out, immediately standing up. Applejack went to greet him. "What was that all about?" she asked. "My friend was there. We talked a bit." He paused. "Listen, Applejack. Twilight, there's something I gotta do. Can I get my machete back from you?" "Ellis," Twilight spoke, "I'm not sure if I can do that. The mayor said things have changed." "Things have changed, Twilight," Dominic interrupted. "A monster just ran amok in your town, and the human is the only one who knows how to destroy it. Were you prepared to take action after the tank had gone?" She said nothing. "That's what I thought. If he's going to remedy this problem, then he must have at least be equipped for it." "We're gonna have to tell the mayor about these, though," Applejack said. God damn it, said Applejack. "We can't keep her in the dark, especially at this time like this." "Then she shall hear about it," Dominic said. "The well-being of Ponyville falls to her. It's only fair." He turned to Twilight. "You retrieve his weapon while we inform Miss Mare. Are we in agreement?" "Sounds like a plan, man," Ellis confirmed. "I'll be right back." The librarian almost turned to gallop off. "Where should I meet you guys?" Either at the library or..." He trailed off when he noticed that the townsfolk were wandering in the same direction. Twilight approached one of them. "Excuse me." She got the attention of the brown hourglass cutie mark cold. "Where is everybody going?" "The mayor has called a town meeting," he replied. "Every able-bodied pony is to attend and such." With that, he trotted off with the flowing crowd. Why do I keep seeing that guy everywhere?" Ellis queried. That's Dr. Hooves. He's pretty busy from what I've heard. Has a lot of places to go to," Twilight answered. "Well, I suppose that we're real. That is where we'll be joining up then," Dominic concluded. "Find us at the meeting after you reclaim his weapon. We may not have much time before it comes back." Everyone took a wary glance at every forest. "I'll be back soon," said Twilight without another word. She galloped off to her home. Come on, y'all," Abject spoke up. "I have a feeling it'll start soon." The library door creaked open to reveal the darkened room behind it. Twilight carefully stepped inside and used her faintly glowing magic to shut the door behind her. The house was strangely quiet. "Spike?" she called. "Spike!" No answer. That was strange. She continued upstairs to her bedroom. Zecora was still in her bed, right where she left her. The zebra was lying on her back, legs splayed in an unladylike fashion, snoring up an earthquake with the bedsheets and shambles around her. Twilight couldn't help but giggle at the contrast between the mysterious, collected witch doctor and her languid, sleeping habits. She didn't know her personally, being almost as reclusive as Dominic was, but it seemed she wasn't as different as one might think. She had her quirks, just like every pony else. But now, but now was not the time to muse. There was a monster on the loose somewhere in Everfree Forest that only Ellis knew how to combat. She needed to find his knife as soon as possible, though she couldn't see how that comparatively small thing could hurt that hulking thing. It was the only weapon Ellis had when he came here, so they would have to make do somehow. Twilight illuminated the enchanted cubbyhole where her unicorn horror. She was surprised how well the spell held up. All physical enchantments naturally decayed over time unless it was imbued with magical ruins, but she didn't have the time nor the proper reason to do so, and the effectiveness of the illusion would wear with it. Though it was dark, it seemed her invisible wall was still as perfect as the day she casted it. The spell itself wasn't particularly advanced or powerful, but it was more difficult than the usual spells she cast day to day. She expected the wall would have at least lost some detail within 24 hours, but it seems more than 2 days and none of the magic has deteriorated. Her skills must have been improved. She took pride in that. Now to dispel it, she thought to herself. The process of dispersing the illusion was simple, but she was a bit crestfallen that such a prime example of her gift with magic had already ran the course of its usefulness. Why, if Princess Celestia wasn't so busy, she would invite her to see it. No, she chided herself. Now was not the time to get attached to little things. With a bright spark of magic, a bead of sparkling power floated from the tip of her horns and flew towards the cubbyhole. As soon as it connected, the barrier dissolved into a shower of magic dust, causing the cord to turn a bit in irritation. The air cleared, and Twilight looked into the compartment. The machete was gone. Twilight blinked frantically. She searched through a recess. The books and everything else that was there prior was still present, but the sheathed weapon was nowhere to be found. The librarian started to panic. How could have it been gone? Was it taken? Her spell was perfect. No pony could have seen past it. Did she accidentally misplace it, or didn't remember it? No. She wouldn't do something as careless as that. She kept track of everything, and what she couldn't keep track of, she left Spike to do it. Hold on. She looked again. Her suspicions were confirmed, for the machete was not the only thing that was gone. The bag of pearls was gone as well. Twilight snorted in frustration. Spike! Spike! With his deadly massive blade and claw, Spike turned to meet the source of the tremors that shook the earth to its core. From the hardened rock of the burning battlegrounds rose a towering, chitinous abomination. Its body was as black as death itself. Its mandibles spat out a combination of frothing spittle and pure malice. Its beady red eyes penetrated the soul of all who dared to meet its gaze. It cast a great shadow, blotting out the blood-red sun for Spike and his comrades, who were engaged in fierce battle all around him, against the twisted creatures that came from beneath the ground. Giant insectoid arms ended in honed razor-sharp talons churned crumbling rock beneath its weight as it stomped towards its foe. The one they call Spike, the monster slayer, its terrible voice rang over the din of war, as loud as the thousand cannons and deep as hell from whence it came. Spike! It repeated and clawed closer. Your insolence will be tolerated no longer. Many of my kin you have slain, but they were weak. Their chitin was not as thick as their resolve, but now you face me. It reared up, displaying a segment natural armor it so prided, harder than the strongest steel and more dense than the most stalwart of the heroes. Its body was a timeline of millennia of battle. Gouges and scorch marks covered every inch. None of them even came close to defeating the behemoth. Many have tried to best me, but their efforts were for naught. I have endured centuries of conflict, killed your greatest champions, toppled many of your petty mortal kingdoms with my own claws. You are but a speck to me. Its thunderous voice was paired with the foul stink of its breath. It was a smell of despair and thousand open graves. The very presence of the monstrosity would make any regular dragon cower with fear, but Spike stood his ground, heroically stoic to this horror. I'm going to destroy you, slay the Slayer, and then all of Equestria will meet the same fate. Wait, get it. I'm going to destroy you, slay the Slayer, and then all of Equestria will meet the same fate. It made a sweeping gesture with its ebony limbs. Nothing will stop me from erasing everything you love from the face of the earth. Its beady red eyes gazed upon the insignificant figure of the dragon, including your betrothed. Rarity. A low growl surfaced from his throat. With his muscles stung tightly as the mighty steel cable of a ballista, he raised his glittering blade to a ready position. You shall not lay a talon on her, fiend! Spike snarled through gritted teeth. He didn't actually know what fiend meant, but it came naturally to him. It seemed like the right word to use to describe something that would dare her rarity. Your tentacle reign of fear is over. You may have killed our greatest champions before, but you shall not have me, this fair land, or my fair lady. The great towering abomination bellowed forth a gargling laugh. Such petty, foolish sentiment. A great shame you cannot win battles with words. It raised his massive limbs above its head, ready to bring it down on a warrior. I will send you to the fire pits of Kor, like the gnat you are. The talon came hurling down to the Balray champion with the force of 100 battering rams. Spike still moving, poised to take action. The limb impacted the ground, and the monster winded all 8 of its eyes. It pulled back, screaming out a horrific wail from its thrashing mandibles, clutching the wound on its hand that was gushing out black ichor. Spike was on one knee, holding his great sword, covered head to foot in the lifeblood of his foe. A crater had formed around him where he stood. I think I will prove to be more of a challenge, the dragon shouted defiantly. Gah! Insolent creature, you mortals shall know your place soon enough. Holding aside its bleeding palm, it took another massive swipe with another of his many arms. Spike jumped backwards, feeling the vivid sensation of a gust of turbulence cooling the air of thick blood on his scales as the claw missed him by mere inches. He executed a perfect roll and dodged another attack. The behemoth made its second mistake by using another overhead spike, which the dragon warrior sidestepped instinctively. For a moment, the razor talons were embedded in the ground. The monstrosity used its massive strength to wrench it out, but before that, Spike devised a plan to use error to his advantage. Hopped onto the limb, charged up the arm and towards the beast's head. You dare! It slapped its palm on its arm in an attempt to rid the pest once and for all, but Spike dodged it flawlessly and continued up the monster's chitinous appendage. Seeing that didn't work, it shook its arm vigorously. Spike stumbled and tried to keep perched on his arm, digging his claws into the armored shell as much as he could, but he couldn't hold on forever. Then he was hit with a brilliant tactic. Timing it correctly, he let go when the arm was swinging upward, launched by the creature's own force. The warrior soared through the air, arcing towards the twisted face of the abomination. The beast could see his undoing before his eyes and attempted in vain to stop it. He backpedaled on his towering legs and lashed at the air so to ground his attacker. The dragon evaded these strikes in midair while still rocketing down to his target. He reversed a grip on his sword and tipped down at his enemy. His cape billowed and fluttered in the wind as he gave a powerful war cry. The sword connected with the soft flesh of its eyes and sank hilt deep. The monster shrieked in agony. Spike! It gurgled with its blood cascading in the ground with its black rain. What are you doing? Spike yanked out his sword and slashed away at the incoming claws before stabbing into the next eye. The eye cord coated every inch of his blood. Another warped howl exploded from its mouth. I'm slaying you, vile monster! Nothing as evil as you could possibly live forever. Batting away more attempts to knock him off, Spike swung down below the creature's jaw and proceeded to pry off its segmented armor with his mystical flamberge. He thrust into the soft part between the plates and gripping the handle with both claws, planting his feet firmly on the beast's surface, and pulled with all his might. The behemoth felt this. Spike, where are you? Are you down here? There was no good. The armor was too firmly attached, and Spike feared that he would be dismounted before he got it off. All of Equestria was counting on him to defeat this menace and bring peace to the land. He couldn't lose now. Grunting it with effort, he put more strength into his pull. His muscles screamed in pain, but he could feel the armor start to snap off its tendons. Strange. Last time the monster spoke, it sounded off higher pitched, more feminine, more familiar. There was a sharp snap, and the armor came off partway. A roar of agony. The wounded pride followed. That same armor had stayed in place for centuries, but now the realization that maybe the end began to dawn on the monster. It thought it was indestructible. Nothing is indestructible. Still, the beast would fight to the end. He tried to claw the infiltrator off of his armor, but Spike had already shifted positions. He now had the handle of his blade on his shoulder, giving more push to the lever driven by pure determination. He was partly protected by the creature's own defenses. Spike, where are you? The voice came again. He had to keep going, even though his body was begging for him to stop for a little further. Spike! Twilight! The baby dragon dropped the machete. As it clattered to the floor, the illusion shattered. The smell of blood and smoke was replaced with the smell of dust. Sounds of battle were replaced with the silence of the library's candlelit basement. The gigantic monster was no longer. Instead, a couple of slapdash wooden dummies were there, chipped away by the hacks of his dull blade. There was the unicorn known as Twilight Sparkle looking at him with such burning contempt. Spike couldn't find any excuse. What do you think you're doing? She berated. He looked at the fallen machete as he stared in words. Stuff? Twilight couldn't even begin to fathom the proper words to chide her assistant. She started by taking the knife with her magic and glaring down at Spike hard. This is a dangerous weapon, Spike. You could have hurt yourself with it. She paced around him, her anger disallowing her to stay in one place. All of Ponyville is in ruins from a giant monster, and here you are playing with Ellis's knife like a toy. No, it's not like that, he blurred defensively. I didn't know it was his. I swear, I just... Don't talk back to me, Twilight shouted. Whatever words Spike would have said became lodged in his throat. I thought you knew better. I thought you had an ounce of common sense in you. I thought you had an ounce of respect for me in you. Evidently not, because here I am, scolding you like a child. Do you have any rational reason for doing... She pointed at the crude dummy. Doing this? Spike was taken aback by just how angry she was. She was never this angry, not even when she found the charred book he kept from her. She only talked sternly to him. This was different. It scared him. I don't know. I just picked it up, and I started seeing things I have never seen before. Twilight stopped him before he could carry on with this maneuver. She bucked the dummy to pieces before his eyes. Splinters clattered to the floor, and Spike gasped as all the work he put into those were ruined. I don't have time to put up with your lies, Spike. Every pony in town is reeling from what happened last night, and She faltered for a split second, blinking off into space like she was thinking inwardly. The edges of her eyes became moist. You don't have even acknowledge that. Just ponies died, Spike. No pony will ever see them again. It may be a foal who's lost his mother or a colt who's lost his best friend, but they're gone, and I didn't. Her emotions threatened to go into a landslide. She bit her lip and squeezed her eyes shut. Where's the cover? She said cruelly. Over there. Spike pointed to the strap sitting by the doorway. He couldn't bear to look at her. Twilight picked up the sheath, put a machete and walked out with only a suppressed sniffle. He didn't know exactly how or why, but Spike felt like dirt. He didn't know that the town was destroyed. He didn't know anything about how serious the situation was outside. Still, he felt the shame come all the same. Here he was, acting out a delirious fantasy while suffering took place elsewhere. His rump fell to the cold stone floor. He sat there in the light of the flickering candles, quivering, trying his hardest not to cry. Warriors don't cry. Warriors are tough as nails. Spike knew that he was no warrior. He was just a stupid idiot who thought he was a warrior. Still, he held back his tears because, despite the fact that he knew he was just a baby dragon assistant librarian who he loved like a sister, he kept telling himself that warriors don't cry. Upstairs, he could barely make out Twilight sobbing loudly in the lobby. Outside the town hall, there was the last meeting, where the last meeting took place. The entire town waited for the stage. Unlike last time, however, there was no excited buzz amongst the crowd. Only quiet, disconcerted murmurs. Elsewhere they looked, they beheld the chaos of the rampaging beast. There is no part of the town one could go without being reminded of the destruction that took place prior. Even the very ground they stood on was broken and churned. Sometimes one would find that there were entire chunks of cobblestone that were missing, only to discover the missing piece embedded into a building. Some ponies lost their possessions, some lost their homes, some even lost their loved ones, though tragic death was a thing most ponies could accept. Every pony had to die someday. Murder, however, was something they couldn't. In a near-utopian equestrian society, virtually no pony had a reason to kill another. It wasn't completely unheard of course, but Ponyville has not experienced anything like this since its founding nearly 100 years ago. There was movement on the stage. A somber Mare came slowly trotting up to the podium, a slip on her mouth. There was bags under her eyes, evidence of her lack of rest and the weight of the town's tragedy set firmly in her back. Her grayish white was now as neatly kept as it usually was. The burden she had to bear was unspeakable. She barely knew how to cope with it. Any lesser mayor would have given up, but even at the worst times, Miss Mayor had always stuck with it. She promised the ponies of Ponyville that she would uphold the law and the well-being of the town, no matter what the personal cost. The piece of paper was placed on the podium. "Citizens of Ponyville," she announced through the mic. Everybody hushed almost immediately. "Thank you all for coming, and bless all who couldn't make it." She stole a moment of silence, then she got right to the business. She didn't want to waste her breath on mindless pleasantries. "I regret to announce the statistics of the results of the attacks last night. We have a total of 39 injured, 3 critical, and 9 dead." Not a soul in the crowd dared to even draw a breath. "But," she went on to say, "we shall preserve like we always have. We will mourn the loss of those who did not live to see today, and we will rebuild what has been destroyed. On the subject of the monster, I have sent a letter to the count requesting troops from the Royal Guard. They will protect our borders. In time, this tragedy will be forgotten. Let us hope that, with care and caution, nothing like this will ever happen again." When her head turned to the ground, the ponies knew that the major's speech was done. Short and simple. Mare didn't have any affinity to soaring speeches. If she did, now would not be the proper time. Her will was hanging by a thread. She had much work to do. "You sure, man? She's up on stage." "Well, we will not get another chance to convene with her," replied Dominic. "She'll bury herself in paperwork as soon as the steps outside her office." Ellis wiped the sweat from under his hat. "All right, but if this goes sideways, it's on you." Ignoring or just not hearing the grumbles of irritation from the dark earth pony, Ellis jaunted up the brief stairway that led to the stage floor and got the attention of the mayor. When Mayor caught sight of the human, her expression turned sour. He was the last thing she wanted to see right now. Hey, Miss Mayor, I wanted to talk to you for a sec. Mayor scowled. What could you possibly want now of all times? Ellis stopped right in front of the politician at the front of the podium to catch his breath. The remaining crowd of ponies all became interested in the presence of the human. Now hear me out, ma'am. I know you got a lot on you and stuff, but I can help. I can take care of your monster if you just let me have my machete back. The mayor glared, intensified. Why on earth would I allow you to help with anything? You've done nothing but act like a buffoon since you got here. You've ran across town screaming at least 3 times and instigated a drunken brawl. Human shifted uncomfortably. Now, my defense, only half of those were my fault. I've stuck my neck out for you, too. All yesterday morning I've been conversing with the chief of police, convincing him to not arrest you for public disturbance. She pressed on aggressively. You know what you are? A fool. A childless fool. I don't care about where you're from or what you've done, but your actions clearly speak for themselves. Ellis grimaced but recovered. Yeah, I know I've been acting kind of stupid, but just listen to me. Y'all have no idea what you're up against. I have the Royal Guard on its way, straight from Camelot. Any monster, no matter how big or vicious, will think twice if it sees the gold armor of Celestia's chosen few. Applejack and Dominic caught up with him on stage. They watched the argument swing back and forth, with intent. But that's just it, ma'am. It ain't some rampaging wildlife creature from some parts unknown. What are you saying? It ain't gonna back down from any show force. It don't think no more. It just kills. Let's explain darkly. For a moment, Mary said nothing. She inhaled a long, quiet gasp to calm her nerves. Before long, though, she regained her perpetual cool composure. She couldn't let fear and uncertainty overtake her now. She had an example to set. And how do you know this? How is it that you're suddenly a monster expert? Ellis hesitated. Well, I've dealt with these things before. From where? Where did this creature come from? A little voice in his head told him that he was being played. Mary wasn't the best at verbal skirmishing, but she had a way with words, a few tricks, and Ellis was an easy target, unless the mechanic started out an answer. It came from where I am from. The facts were becoming clear to Miss Mayor. She had him to avail. Now it was time to bring down the hammer. What are you saying? How did it get here? Ellis paused for a moment, unsure of what to say. Well, like I said before, I'm not really sure how I got here, but it may have gotten here the same way. It came here with you? She may have let too much anger and volume slip into her voice. She only wanted to be aggressive to get her point across. She knew Ellis's type. He was a thick-skulled ignoramus that wouldn't listen to reason if he set his mind to something. She only wanted to chide him into submission and get back to dealing with the problem on her own terms. But the idea completely dissolved in an instant. She felt as if her lungs iced over and her heart ceased to beat from her heart when she heard her shrill voice echo into a loudspeaker. She sensed the wide-eyed stares of shock and confusion locked on the stage coming from the crowd of ponies and still remained. The air itself held its breath, and not even a murmur was heard. Calm before the storm. Applejack, Dominic, Ellis, and Mayor all went numb with dread. She had again forgotten to turn off the microphone. Oh, shit, said Ellis. Like a spark catching tinder, a hot flame was born in existence. From the turbulence of the common citizen who felt the panic of last night's event, the sorrow of those who lost their homes, the agonizing grief of the few who lost a friend, family member, or loved one, the pendulum swung, and that all turned to bitter rage. The assembled opponents began gritting their teeth and raising their voices, shouting curses and ugly obscenities at their nearest source of pain, which was Ellis. The fire spread, and soon the entire crowd was consumed by dissent and anger. Gone was all the rationality and compassion. Only chaos and the threat of absolute anarchy was present. Mary and her hooves rooted to the floor. Her heart was racing. She may have made the greatest mistake of her life, maybe her last. When she gained what was left of her senses, she made her way back to the podium. Now there's no need to act violent, I'm sure. He had something to do with this, the bystander yelled. I knew no good would come of him. How could you do this to us? Mayor had never had an angry mob on her hose before, but from what she learned from her early days of apprenticeship, she knew there was no stopping the turbulent emotion that took hold in a large group of ponies. It is a spectacular phenomenon, he used to say, in the same manner a crowd could be fueled with adrenaline in a sporting event. They could also be roused into singular intensity of public unrest. How he used to talk of it so nonchalantly, being face to face to one was too terrifying for words. Meanwhile, Ellis slowly backed away while the crowd threatened to spill into the stage like a pot of boiling water. Then Applejack pushed the mayor off the podium, sucking in a deep breath. "Will you all settle the hay down?" They did. "I'm darn near ashamed to live in a town where y'all lose your heads at the first whiff of trouble. Whatever happened to compassion, forgiveness, love, and tolerance?" There you go. The majority cast their eyes downward. "Ellis is guilty of nothing but the pursuit of happiness. He fought and bled for that goal, just as we've all had. When he came to Equestria, he had no friends, no family, and he owed nothing to us. But he put a smile on his face. He put a smile on his face and worked to help Ponyville. He worked to earn your trust and become closer to to those he met here. I'm proud to call him my friend. There's a monster out there, yes, a monster that came from Ellis's home, but it's the same monster that destroyed his home as well. It's his enemy as much as yours, except he's fought them before. Now he wants to help and put it down for good. And all you ponies can think of it is taking it out on the nearest unlucky fellow." The crowd was silent. They all felt regret. "Pull your heads out of the dirt, Ponyville. We're better than this. Go home and think about how you feel in his position. But before you do, know that all this pain and suffering ain't for nothing. We're gonna make sure this monster doesn't no more harm. You have my word." The crowd finally dispersed, heads hung low, trudging back to their homes. Applejack released a huge sigh, letting her muscles slacken before hopping off the podium and returning to the group with a smile. "I think I did good for oof!" And she was caught breathless as Ellis stooped down and picked her up with a mighty two-armed bear hug. "Thank you, AJ. Outside the whole zombie apocalypse, that was the bravest thing anyone's ever done for me." He squeezed her hard. It was not unlike the constricted embrace when they first met, but different from last time. Applejack hugged him back, while blushing up a storm, one might add. "I'd do anything for a good friend, Ellis." While they were busy, Harold Mayor slowly backed towards the door of the city hall. She was stopped when she hit something solid, yet not wood, and her nasal passages were assaulted with the most horrific stench. Going somewhere, miss," spoke a deep, rasping voice. Gasping and regretting the intake of air, she turned around to meet the eerie, deep blue gaze of Alchemist Dominic. His breathing was slightly audible. Who are you?" "Dominic, miss. You may not know me, but that is due to me not concerning myself with politics these days. However, my associate will still needs your express consent in the reposition of his weapon. I can't let him put himself in harm's way for the sake of my town." "Your town? I was under the most convincing impression that this town belonged to the citizens that reside within. But I was charged with protecting and governing it. Maybe the only way to protect and govern it at the moment is to accept the help we are offering you." "I can do it myself," she exploded. "It's my duty, my responsibility. What good am I as a mayor if I can't do that? Look at what is happening to our for one Fausting second," she shot back. "This is much bigger than you. You cannot possibly handle this yourself." "I can and I will. I owe them nothing less." Dominic narrowed his eyes. "That's not what your father would have done." Mayor's eyes widened, but she gritted her teeth once more. "You know nothing about my Mayor Maine. Yes, I just so happen to have known him quite well. He was a good leader, an inspiration, wise beyond his age." Dominic shook his head to rattle memories and started beyond the mayor. "I remember a quote of his, one he had told you, I'm sure. I could do so much for these ponies, but I am still But one, Pony, you must know, Ginger Snap, that there are some things you cannot do alone. She was speechless. She hadn't heard that nickname since she was just a little filly. Tears almost flooded her eyes, brought by the seemingly ancient feeling of nostalgia. There was no doubt that this strange stallion knew her father. Or have you forgotten forgotten such words? His returned to her. I believe you know what has to be done. Ellis and Applejack were just finishing their rather lengthy hug when Mary approached them. Slowly, she brought her eyes to the tall human. Ellis, I know we've had our differences, and admittedly, some of them were not entirely rational, but I had good reason to doubt you. You came from nowhere. That alone was enough to raise suspicion. The mechanic had nothing to say. Now that he saw it from her perspective, he could see why she would distrust him. Your friends tell me that you are able to help. I want to hear it from you. Ellis kneeled down to the aged politician to meet her at eye level. Miss, the last few weeks of my life were a living hell. Taking down a tank ain't a walk in the park, but I've killed hundreds of infected, and they only managed to kill me once or twice. Mary blinked in confusion. The point is, these things thrashed my home and killed just about everyone I used to care for. I would give my life again to make such that sure that don't happen here. She was silent for a moment. Very well. If you say your intentions are truly selfless, then who am I so to deny you? You may have your weapon back, as well as anything you require to do the job. Mary clocked back to the town hall, and Doris stepped inside. Thank you, miss. I won't disappoint. Stopped before she closed the door and looked back at the weary eyes. Just get rid of it. The door slammed. Dominic joined up with the group, receiving a raised eyebrow from Applejack. How the hay did you change her mind? I know the mayor. She ain't the type to be swayed. The aged alchemist smirked. I have a few methods of persuasion I've acquired over the years. Let's dismiss the matter on that note. The farm pony scowled. Now hold up. You can't just... Hey, Twilight. Ellis suddenly shouted, cutting Applejack off in mid-thought. She and Dominic turned to see the librarian returning from her tree home with a machete levitating beside her with a mystical lavender aura. The human gave an exuberant wave with both arms in the air as if he thought Twilight couldn't make out his stark appearance. The trio hopped off the stage and met Twilight halfway. Applejack knew that she looked as if she were dragging her hooves. Did the mayor say yes? She croaked. Yeah. Red tape and cut. I'll cut and such. Well, here you go, Ellis. Here you go. Ellis watched in fascination as his possession flowed into his hand. Magic was still new to him, so it still left him in awe, no matter how small or nonchalant the use. Once the object was in his palm and the magic had dispersed, he unsheathed the blade, held it in front of his face, carefully inspecting it without proper warning to the others, began to swing it around the air. The ponies jumped back a few inches as the metal cut through empty space. Ellis brought it over his head and around his shoulder, behind his back, and his right hand once more. He twirled it in his hand, twisting his wrist in familiar coordination. He tossed it into the air, then it flipped twice and fell back into his palm. It was as if it were an extension of his body, not just a tool. A smile crept in his face, and a hungry look seeped into his eyes. It's good to have you back, old buddy. Ellis sheathed the blade, fixed the strap over his shoulder, and turned back to Twilight. Thanks for keeping it safe. Sure thing, she replied. What's the matter? He asked, perplexed. He kneeled down and get a better look at her face. Have you been crying? She flinched away. It's nothing, just all the dust in the library. It got in my eyes. All right. He stood up and turned to Applejack. Well, we got one part of it. Rumrun said she'd supply him with some incendiary device, but he trailed off. But what? We got everything you need to get done. What else could you possibly need? Believe it or not, AJ, a tank is one ugly mother. It ain't gonna even let me get close enough to use that, and if I do get close enough, it'll turn my bones to gravel. No, every time I face down one of these, I had 3 other guys backing me up with guns. Even then, it's still a lead-absorbent sponge. We'll stand by. We'll stand by you, Ellis. We'll help you. Aye, Dominic agreed. Appreciate, appreciate that. Appreciate, but it won't make a difference either. You'd be surprised. Twilight countered. It's not that I don't think y'all can hold your own. It's just that unless you can shoot lasers out of your eyes, it's a suicidal mission. Well, what can you do? Abject queried, with Twilight was still reeling from the lasers from her eyes in the ocean. You have everything you came with. What you have on your back is probably the deadliest thing in Equestria right now. Ellis rubbed his own chin in contemplation for a moment. He stood there for what was about 30 seconds before his hand dived into his pocket and he extracted a heavy cylinder made of plastic and brass. He turned the shell in his fingers, pondering deeply. It's crazy, but it just might be possible. What? He turned to Applejack. You know a good blacksmith? Right. One's the best smithy around. He trained at Stalingrad. She replied. Why? Within the sweltering pits of forge, an old pony worked. A steady beat of clangs resounded through the room, signaling each fall of the hammer. Sparks splashed out like white-hot water from every stacked toe of metal on metal. The place smelled of liquid iron and burning fuel. More clangs rang off the anvil before finally it ceased for a moment, and the noise in the room was replaced with a hissing sound of instantly vaporizing water. Wrought iron, stallion in his 80s, wiped the buildup of perspiration on his brow and with an overused rag, while his unicorn magic brought the horseshoe out from the steaming pool of water and held it in front of him. From his work table came a pair of pony-sized spectacles. Donning them on his face, he inspected his work, scrutinizing every square smear for flaws or irregularities. When there was none to be had, he smirked in satisfaction, wheeled up to a rack over by the wall, where it was hung for the rest of the newly made horseshoes. Taking a deep sigh, he carefully bent his neck until a cluster of small popping sounds were heard. He modeled blue and gray coat was clump of sweat and grime. He had a long, wiry gray beard rolling from his chin, knotted in 2 places. He had some hair left on his scalp. He wished he had a bit more. His frosty eyes matched the white aura of his magic as it held his hammer. Now that his work has been done, he thought of appeasing the growling of his stomach that had been bothering him for the last hours of work. He thought of his wife cooking up a hearty supper at home. He thought of Granny Smith's apple pies, and all of the thoughts were pushed out of his head. He loved her pies. They were on top of the things he couldn't do without list. Life would be dull without the occasional taste of that sweet, flaky, tart flavor, with such a hint of cinnamon and whatever unknown but immaculate ingredient she puts in them. There was a ring at a door as somebody entered the forge. His daydreams faded while the sound of steps descending the stone staircase was heard. From the hallway emerged Applejack, the sweetie that came by yesterday to have her grandmother's gardening tools fixed. Her company was refreshing to Rot. Following her was a figure that almost gave him a start. It was a strange, tall creature the orange farm pony spoke of yesterday. He furrowed his brow while he attempted to remember his name. It would come to him eventually. He set his hammer and adjusted his spectacles as he took his place behind his workbench, which doubled as a counter. "Hello, sweetie. What can I do for you today?" A distressed thought came to him. "Oh dear, were those tools no good? I'm sorry for any mistakes I made. The fire didn't seem very hot yesterday." "The tools are fine, Mr. Iron. Just like always, but I ain't here for fixing things. Ellis would like to ask something of you." The human gave the blacksmith a wave and walked towards the table. "Nice to meet you, mister. This is asking a lot and all, but we got a problem on our hands, and I'm prepared to pay whatever price to get this done." He thought for a moment. Is this about that monster? Yes, it is. Brian had his share of toils during his time in the bleak, wintry lands of where he trained, but he had never been more fearful of his life and love than the events of the previous night. The commotion alone was enough to scare him and his wife half to death. But when he heard of a monster, he thought it was the end for sure. In the end, they came out unscathed, but the memories were still unnervingly fresh in his mind. If there is something he could do about it, then he would take that opportunity. I'll help. But what did you have in mind? Human hand was clenched around some sort of small object. What it was, Iron did not know. He would soon find out. Well, to put it simple, the shell was placed on the table in front of him. We got a special order to fill.